Well, good afternoon and huzzah. I'm Gordon Gidlin, president of the San Diego Shakespeare Society, and you are in for a great talk by our speaker, Mr. Brendan Kelso. But first, I want to thank the Coronado Library for hosting this lecture. It's just wonderful how they work with us and other cultural organizations. And also, I want to plug the Shakespeare Society a bit. Our motto is we do Shakespeare all year round, and even in these plague times, in addition to occasional lectures such as today, we have monthly open readings of the plays over Zoom, of course. But it's amazing how we now have an international audience. We even have a fellow in England who gets up at 2 in the morning to join us. And we have an ongoing collaboration with the San Diego Museum of Art, where we post online performances that are paired with selective artworks. And shortly, we hope to get back into the realm of today's lecture. Actually, that is working with students in appreciating the Bard, possibly for next year's student festival. We can always hope. So please visit our website and consider joining us as a member. Now, this afternoon, you're in for a real treat. I had the pleasure last year of meeting Brendan in person. We actually had coffee together, imagine that. And but I know Brendan is an extremely dynamic individual, and I know his enthusiasm for the subject will come through even in this remote medium. Just reach out and touch you. I also know Brendan, though, is very much a proselytizer for his approach in working with kids. He really believes in what he's doing intensely and wants to make sure he shares that with the world. So really with that, I will just turn it over to Brendan.
Oh, thank you very much. Those are very kind words, Gordon. And without much further ado, we'll step right into it. So this presentation is mainly engaging kids with Shakespeare. And I was just, as I was saying earlier, you know, I'm not a Shakespeare expert in any sense, but I'm more of an expert in engaging kids with Shakespeare and classics. And a lot of this comes around my history of what I've done with kids over the past 15 or so years, and how it all ties together. So a little bit about me, a little bit about what I do. Let me get this going. Oh, there we go. All right, basic agenda here. I'm going to just talk a little bit about who I am. Why drama? Because that's kind of, it evolves both of them together. I'm going to send a basic outline of setting up a drama class, other ways we can engage kids with drama. It could be Shakespeare classics or whatever, but it's still with drama in general. Some life skills. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the power of drama in education. And then we're going to do a little bit of Q&A at the end. So if you have any questions, you go down to the bottom and you're going to see a little chat bar. And that chat bar, you just go ahead, click, type in your question. And then in the end, I'll go back, I'll take a look if we have any questions, and we'll address them at that point. So who am I? Why should you even listen to me? I'm a playwright. I write Shakespeare for kids books. This is one of my covers. This is Julius Caesar for kids. You previously saw Macbeth and King Lear in the other two slides. I've sold over 40,000 books. It's actually, I've reached over 100,000 kids with these, with my books. I currently have 27 different titles. And I say Shakespeare for kids, it's Shakespeare and Classics for kids now. I've morphed into two different realms here. And I've been doing this since 2003, and I've directed over 150 different classes personally, but I've worked with countless teachers around the world, and I'll show a little bit more about that in a bit, and setting them up with classes and coaching them into doing that. I'm also a teacher and a coach. I coach homeschool teachers, after school programs, camps. I coach teachers in their classroom how to integrate Shakespeare, one of my plays, into their classes, and how to run their own drama program. I teach parents, especially homeschool parents, on how to do backyard Shakespeare, which I'll show a little bit more about in a bit, which I just love. Then I'm also a speaker. I do presentations like this for the Shakespeare Society. I also do them for homeschool groups and drama groups, book clubs, libraries, and so on. I also do presentations on the power of drama in education, going from engineer to author, publishing and marketing books. And also from time to time, I'll go into classes and do classroom presentations to kids to get them kicked off and excited about Shakespeare. And a little bit about my story of kind of where I got, how I got here. I grew up in the Bay Area. I did a little bit of acting in high school and had some fun with it. My senior year, I did a Shakespeare competition and I did bottom speech, and I ended up getting honorable mention, but it opened up a world to me because language, I'm partially dyslexic, and language in Shakespeare was extremely difficult for me. But something about this and about a donkey, person who gets to turn into a donkey, just, I loved it. So it kind of kicked me off to liking Shakespeare at that moment. I went to Cal Poly San Luis Obispo for engineering, and I am an actual degreed engineer. And then I moved to San Diego. I was there for 7 years. I go down there once a year. Like I said, this was supposed to be in person today, but maybe next year. And then I hit the road. So around the year 2000, my wife and I, 2 dogs and a cat, packed up a trailer and a truck, 6 months on the road. And we decided to go anywhere we wanted when we ended, and we ended up back in San Luis Obispo. And so that's where we live now. And my son was born in 2003, and that's him, the little one. And he was, I didn't care for the job I had at the time. And so I said, I'll just stay home and I'll watch my kid. Yeah, that's what I'll do. And after a while of realizing he sleeps like 16 hours a day and I was watching movies all day, my wife came home and said, you do need to make some money. So she signed me up for a local Parks and Rec. And I ended up teaching in a class called Hamlet in a Can, because I kind of meddled with a script and taught it to her middle school kids a year or so before. But she came home, signed me up, and I'm like, you did what? I can't teach. I don't know kids. And so we did it. And then once we did it, the kids came up at the very end. They're like, this was awesome. What are we doing next? And I'm like, next? And I literally on the fly, I was like, oh, we're doing Midsummer. Yeah, that's right. And I went home that weekend and wrote Midsummer. And at the same time, I had a mom in the audience come up to me and say, this was really great. I need you to come up and teach my kids, which are about 20 minutes away. And I was like, it's kind of far. I'm not really sure. And she said, well, I'm not really asking you, I'm telling you. And so at that point, I said, okay. And I ended up teaching it. And then it started a couple different theaters, bought some of my scripts. And I realized, I got something here, but not enough to make any, living at it at this point. So I got a real job at a company called Slime. Yes, there's a company called Slime. And I was there. It's a very creative avenue, and I was there for 10 years. And in 2008, I published my first book. And then in 2015, I quit the real job and I started working for myself. So I've been doing playwriting and teaching kids Shakespeare and presenting for the last 5 years now. And here I am. And all these kids you actually see in this picture right here, this class was in 2003. So they're all actual adults now, which is scary, to be honest with you, looking at them and realizing how much they've grown. Just a little something about my books. You could tell I'm number 7 on there. And this is Amazon's bestseller list in comedies, and Tina Fey, Johnny Carson, Trevor Noah, they're kind of funny. So I thought it's good company. And then in children's theater books, I almost made it to the top, but some, Harry Potter, whatever that is, that knocked me out. So curse you, Harry Potter. Yeah, so I've done pretty well with these. My books, plays, I've got 27 titles right now. You can see these 2 on the right aren't Shakespeare. I have 14 that are Shakespeare and 13 that are classics. And really my goal is to get kids to love Shakespeare, love classic novels, and really understand them. And so Dracula is one we launched about 4 weeks ago. And then upcoming titles I have coming in the next 6 weeks, Jekyll and Hyde. And then at the end of the year, Robin Hood. And then I'm on the side, I'm working on Hamlet the musical, which will be crazy. Now the reach, so you get an idea of kind of the breadth of where I get my ideas from. And so I've had my Macbeth for kids performed in a castle in Scotland, which is like the coolest thing ever because it's in a castle. I mean, who has a spare castle down the road? Scotland, they do. I've had my Romeo and Juliet performed in Verona, Italy, which, as most of you know, is the birthplace for Romeo and Juliet. This is actually a school from France that used my plays, and they came there to do performance and little vignette scenes all around Verona. Every year for the past 3 years, the Houston Independent School District, they get 8 of their schools together and they all meet on a Saturday and they do a Shakespeare Elementary Festival, and each one uses a different one of my plays. And my plays are about 20, 30 minutes. So they spend about 4 or 5 hours just watching each other's Shakespeare plays. And these are 5th and 6th graders that are doing this. So it's pretty awesome what they do. I have a homeschool mom out of Kansas. She's also starts libraries in third world countries. And so she's taken a lot of my books and started this one's in Kenya. And I just love the smile and pure joy in his face when looking at a Romeo and Juliet. I've had my plays turned into musicals. This teacher, she took just contemporary music and integrated it in. This was Hamlet. And there's so many, if you know anything about Hamlet and kids, everybody dies at the end and kids love to melodramatically die on stage. So this was the very end, and the ensemble piece, the kids who were singing but didn't really have speaking parts, they were like, we want to die, we want to die. So they all ran on stage. We're like, we got poisoned too. And next thing you know, you had 40 dead kids lying on the stage. The funniest thing ever. The audience just roared in laughter. It was so much fun. Shake It Up with Shakespeare. That's something that a number of schools do. There was a homeschool group in Oklahoma. They have a 300-person co-op, and what they did is they'll do their 3rd and 4th graders will do Midsummer. Their 4th and 5th will do my Macbeth, and then older kids will do Hamlet, and they'll just do it as a night of theater for their school. And they call it Shake It Up with Shakespeare. So, and I've had a school down in Anaheim. They took 7 of my plays, the shorter versions, and they did a full just night of Shakespeare that way too. So there's a lot of different ways. And then after school programs, this poor soul got stabbed by one of his kids. You know, I feel bad for him. It was me, but you know, they love that too. So why do I do it? Well, this is really the reason why. It's all the smiles. All these kids are just really loving classics and loving Shakespeare. And that last one right there, that is Caliban, the fish monster, if you know Tempest at all. I mean, anybody who writes a fish monster, somebody's got to play it, and it's a lot of fun. So that was him. Shakespeare once said, "The play's the thing wherein I'll catch the conscience of the king," Hamlet. But, you know, I think he had it a little wrong, because the play's the thing where education is king, me. So I think that's really important. I think it's very apropos for everything, because Shakespeare is all about education at this point. And acting and education, because this is the main place where Shakespeare is presented from a kid's perspective, as they get it in education. And this saying is perfect for both Shakespeare and drama. I hear and I forget. People will just be talk. So I see and I remember. You have multiple senses going on. You have your hearing, you have your sight. And so it's going to be easier to remember it. You'll remember some of the photos I do. Me blabbering this whole time, you may not remember as much. But when you do something, you understand it. It's a kinesthetic approach. You're using many more senses. And with that, we're going to do a little something really quick. So I want everybody out there, and I can see you now. I want everybody out there to stand up really quick. So come on, you guys can stand up really quick. Okay. And then yeah, that's right. I can see you. So stand up. All right. So we're going to do an evil laugh. I teach this to kids all the time, because in Shakespeare, there's villains. So your feet are slightly apart. Get a little bounce in your knee. Get your hands out. Face them up a little. Get your chin up. And I want to hear you say, moi.
Moi.
Ha.
Ah.
Now say ha again. Ha. Now bounce your knee. Move your hands. Look up. Give it an evil. Moi. Ha, 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 ha. Let's hear it.
Moi. Ha, ha, ha.
There you go, Gordon. Awesome. Awesome. Kids love to play villains, and kids love to do that too. So now, I mean, where else are you going to go to a presentation where they teach you how to do an evil laugh? So it's going to be a lot of fun to do stuff. Speaking of doing stuff and understanding, I do what's called a double feature. And this is a great way to get kids to layer the education with Shakespeare and really understand Shakespeare. So the picture in the bottom left is a class. We do a camp. And this one was Much Ado About Nothing. We met Monday morning. We meet 3 hours a day. Friday, we do a live performance at about noon. The kids are off book and everything. And then that night we go to our local Shakespeare festival and we watch on the lower right, Much Ado About Nothing, the actual version. And it's so great because the kids are out there, and in my plays, and you'll see it a little bit later, I have tidbits of Shakespeare's lines sprinkled throughout. And when the kids hear a line that was their line, they're like, that's my line. That was my line. You know, the actors like are interrupted on stage because the kids are like so excited. But then how often are kids super excited in front of a Shakespeare play, which is really the goal and the quintessence of what we're trying to do here. And that's called a double feature. Education. So a fantastic way to introduce classic literature to kids through education is drama. Kids are going to get Shakespeare in high school anyway, so get them when they're younger. It's really the place to tie them into it. You want to teach about history? You know, pick a play. Richard III, Henry V. You know, it's when you read Richard III, it's hard to believe that that was actual history because it just seems so fictional, but it was. You can layer leadership and government into a historical play. Contemporary, different cultures, societies, perspectives. You know, Oliver Twist is great for just like a stratification of just different places in society, and talking about orphans and education. You want to talk about kings and queens with younger kids? Do Midsummer. Rome, Caesar. Romeo and Juliet, Renaissance. Medieval, Hamlet, Macbeth. England and France, you got a whole slew of them. But if you roll it in with education, you'll get so much more out of their learning process that they won't forget. So what is Shakespeare for Kids? What are these books that I write? They're books, I call them, but they're mainly scripts and plays. They're truncated and melodramatic. Key thing is melodramatic. It's mostly me being funny with Shakespeare's lines sprinkled throughout. Each book has 3 plays in it for 3 different group sizes. So small group, about a 15-minute play, larger group, 25-minute. And there's just different, it's not age groups, but just quantity of kids you have. So they're very flexible and you can make them work no matter what. And all the famous lines are in there. And here's a little, I'll do a little reading for you. Here's a little snippet from Hamlet. And I'll just set up the scene. This is Polonius. He's already told Claudius, I'm going to go spy on Hamlet. We don't trust him. In Hamlet, he sees Gertrude. He's hiding behind the curtain. And Hamlet comes in. Mom, I'm very mad. Ah, you scared me. Polonius sneezes from hiding spot. Achoo! What? How now, a rat? Who's hiding? Oh, I'm slain. Oh, the pain. I'll die again. Oh, what hast thou done? Oops, I thought that was Claudius. Oh, well. As I was saying, I am mad. You married Uncle Claudius. Oh, that? Yeah, sorry. Now, you just killed Polonius. Clean up this mess and go to your room. Okay, Mom. Hamlet drags Polonius' body off stage. And kids love this. They love this scene. They love that. And you'll see the stuff highlighted in gray is actual Shakespeare text. And the whole point of it, I mean, a lot of these are pretty simple phrases. The whole point of it is they can read it and say, you know what, that's not that hard. I can do this. It's kind of getting rid of that stigma. It's going through that barrier. And my books are primarily geared between ages 7 or 8 to 14. So 4th grade to middle school. But I've seen younger kids do it. I've seen a teacher teach Hamlet to 1st graders. I usually say like kindergartners, you know, you want to do Midsummer as a bedtime story. Older kids, as I said before, with high schoolers, you want to use this as a jumping off point. And I've learned this just by working with teachers over the years of how they use my books and my materials. So the play's the thing, and here's some of my titles. And one of the first things that I always do with kids, no matter what the age is, and this is the hook, this really pulls them in, is the auditions. My auditions are nothing like any auditions that you've ever done. First of all, they're very simple. And I start them off with, give me your best death. Kids love to melodramatically die on stage. And you can see this group of kids, they're having a horrible time. They'll never remember Shakespeare, right? And the whole point is they're just filled with joy, and if they're laughing, they're going to remember. And what I do is I just say, hey, guess what? In Shakespeare, people die. So line up and give me your best melodramatic death. And kids, inevitably, they all just line up and they want to do it again and again and again. Um, Give me your best scream. I have somebody like lie down on the floor dead because you walked into a room with a dead person, and give me your best scream. And usually I pick the kid that's been talking the most or has been just kind of bugging people. So I just lay him down dead. And when they go and talk, I'm like, oh, well, dead people don't talk. And they just laugh and they just lay there. And so it's a great way to do classroom management as well. Give me your best villain. And you guys have all practiced your villains already, so you already know that key piece. And you can do an evil laugh or a witch's cackle. And it's not just the mwahaha. They can do the they can do the more gut ones or the witch's cackle, and those are always fun to do. And then give me your best melodramatic cry, you know, something like Little Women or Pride and Prejudice. There's moments of sheer sobbing and just over the top is just hilarious. And the whole point is to pull that laugh, that physical comedy of pulling the laugh out of the audience, and learning how to read your audience that way. So those are my additions. That's really it. I never really do cold readings, but the kids love these, and they literally, they will sign up for the class again and again just to go through auditions. Now, engaging your kid with Shakespeare, these books, just to give you an idea, there's 3 plays in them, small, medium, and large. And so if you have a few kids, 5 to 8, and I also, in the last few months, I created a Midsummer and Beowulf to be socially distant plays, so you can do them on stage. You can do Beowulf with as little as 3 kids, and Midsummer with 4. And those are modified scripts you'd have to contact me about. But some other plays you can do as little as 5. Caesar, Two Gentlemen of Verona, Macbeth, you can do as 5. Some are 6, some are 7. Typically the tragedies you can do with less because you kill someone off halfway through and they come back as a different character. The comedies, they all stay alive, so you need a little bit bigger. Midsummer, I think, is 9. But then there's 3 plays and they have different groups. Multiple plays, I already said, you can do Shake It Up with Shakespeare. And you can do this anywhere. You can do these at your library. You can do these at a church, a dojo, Parks and Rec area, a school you happen to know of, a classroom, and outdoor. And I'll show you an outdoor one I did earlier, previously. Run a class. The classes that I typically run are between 6 to 8 weeks. I've done them as few as 5. I've had many teachers do them at 12, and each week we'll have a different educational piece to it that they'll go home for homework and they'll come back with. I find for my plays, the best sweet spot is an hour and a half. You can do it in an hour. I've done it, but an hour and a half gives you time to get there, maybe do some warm-ups, run through the scripts, and then ask some questions. As you get closer to the end, you can actually run it twice. Performance on the final day. One of the key pieces to doing this, and I try to teach this to all the teachers, is on the final day, you may rehearse before you perform, but on the previous day, the previous week before, or the day before, depending if it's a camp, or I always tell them, like, you guys are on your own. I'm not helping you anymore, because they're supposed to be off book. And what typically happens is, if they're off book and they freeze on stage, I'm like, I'm not helping you. And then somebody else will actually step up and they'll start. And this is where the improvising comes in, not improv per se, but improvising and learning how to use the tools you have on stage to help your fellow classmate out, the fellow actor. It's great for social skills, but they've learned to save each other after these 2 or 3 different rehearsals, that when show comes along, I can't help them anyway. They're usually a lot smoother and they're not as fearful of making mistakes. Because I tell them, I'm like, I've done hundreds of these. And how many have been perfect? 0. Mistakes are going to happen, and it's part of it. It's okay. Have fun. And that relaxes the kids a lot too. And then the first day for me is always the hook. I do the auditions, obviously. But I do an intro to the story. I'll do like a quick synopsis of what the story is. I might get up, run around. And then we sit and we do a read through. I'll hand a script out to every kid, and I will literally randomly hand out parts. And when I randomly hand out parts, it doesn't matter if they're a boy or girl, whatever they get and they read that part. Try to work with kids who have reading challenges you might want to know about ahead of time, so you don't give them a big part to read. But other than that, it's just handed out. One of the best was we were doing The Tempest, and I think Miranda's the love interest, and then I forget who the other love interest was, but they were 2 brothers who just really despised each other. and they were in the class together, and they had to say I love you to each other, and all their friends were there cracking up because they just couldn't look at each other and do it, and it was so funny. But that's part of the fun of just randomly handing them out. And then they just write on a sheet of paper their name and tell them to put their name, because they will forget that. Put their name and then the top 3 characters that they want. And lots of times one of those characters is going to be who they read was the character that they randomly were given, because they already feel ownership to it. And then that night, just email the cast. When you do a camp, not much different, except it's just 5 days and you have more games in the first day, but you get more rehearsals during the day. I do 3-hour camps, and on the last day I do a photo. I just get my iPhone out and we do photo shoots and like this little stage photo down below. And then we rehearse like twice during that day. And by Thursday they are off book. And I've done at least 30 different summer camps, and every single one, every kid's always been off book. The only thing I really tweak on a camp is if it's a main character. You know, if a play is named after the character, probably have a lot of lines, Frankenstein, Hamlet, Macbeth. So I'll usually take those characters and I'll split them in half and give it to 2 actors. And it evens off the lines better for everybody and doesn't put a lot of pressure on one kid to memorize a lot of lines in a short period. But basically, so that it's the same basic formula. Oh, and if you do a camp or a class or anything and a reading and you want to use my plays and stuff, let me know and I'll send you a bunch of really cool Shakespeare tattoos. Kids love these. These kids broke into my stash, and so before the play there was at least each kid had at least 5 different Shakespeare tattoos on them. So, you know, that's like the worst thing ever. I got a Shakespeare tattoo on me, so that's a win in my book. You can do a virtual show. This one was Macbeth. This is done by a school in Houston. And what was really cool is they knew the tartans for each character. And so they actually went and found the tartans to set them as their backdrop for each character, because usually you wear a kilt. But in this case, it was, they couldn't do that obviously, but the witches also found the creepy forest around and they put that down. And a virtual performance is really cool because it's different. There's a different learning skills in a sense. One, it's really easy. And I even have a presentation on how to do virtual performances. So if you want, let me know. I can send you a link. Auditions are basically the same. You got to learn how to die and stay within your window here. But you learn different skills. You learn how to play to a camera. You learn how to, you know, you're going to have to bring your hands up to, because it's really one of your few props. You learn that to center yourself on the stage. You learn how to actually use more affect with your face. And if you've taught enough kids, you realize a lot of them have muted faces and they don't project enough. So there's really 2 main things that they have is you have your face and your voice. And when you do a virtual show, you really get to practice different voices if you want to do different voices, and you really have to use the screen effectively. And there's many different ways. You can just read to the screen. I've had people, there's one that was in Alice in Wonderland, someone just sent me, and they basically, they all memorized their parts and they showed up at the theater, or I forget where it was their house maybe, and they filmed their part separately. And then she edited it all together to make a movie. And then I've had another one where the kids all did this at home. This is a school up in Fresno, and they did, they made it very much like a movie. They were just talking sideways, talking to somebody else, and they would go back and forth and the camera would edit the different pieces in. So it really gave it more of a movie effect, and it was really well done. And the kids know way more than you do about all this digital stuff. So let them edit. This is another educational moment. You know, let them do the editing, let them do the post-production, let them find the backgrounds. If you're lost, they won't be, and they'll be able to find a solution for you. So rely on that. And this is great, because one of the things that I always tell teachers is, you know, the way our world is going, everything's video, social media. So wherever they work, one day they're going to have to put some kind of video online, and they're going to have to cut it and crop it and edit it down to present it. So it is a life skill in a sense that they're going to have to use eventually. So that's why a virtual show, even when the world comes back to normal, virtual shows still have a very valid point from an educational perspective. For older kids, and usually this is like 6th grade and up, I always do a Shakespeare insult generator, and I do an insult-a-thon. and they're hilarious and fun. And I love hosting them. So this is my Shakespeare insult generator. You can get it for free on my website, playingwithplays.com. Or you can go to insultlikeshakespeare.com. You get it, you download it, no cost or anything. But you take one word from column 1, one from column 2, one from column 3. You run them together, you throw a little angst behind it, and you have fun with it, you bootless, crook-pated codpiece. And then when the kids are doing this back and forth, I'll tell you about it. Sorry, I got ahead of myself. Insultathon. This is where the kids actually, they study their insults ahead of time. So I always tell them, because you can get about 30,000 different insults with the whole sheet if you actually math it out. But what happens is they will make 5, 6, or 7 of them. They'll practice those insults and they'll write them down. And then when they meet with me or whoever their instructor is, I split up the class. So there's a group over here, there's a group over here, and I pair them off. So one comes up, insult, insult. There's a winner, and then the person who didn't win, they go and sit down. The winner goes back in line, and then they'll repeat the process. And so you just pair them off until you have a bunch of winners, and then it's round 2, round 3, and so on. Teacher decides who wins. I always try to bring in 2 parents or non-biased sources, and this way there's 3 of us, and we just pick. But it repeats, and I always give away a skull. Yorick, because it's a teachable moment. So I always give away Yorick as the prize. It's like, you are the Shakespeare insult champion. Here is your prize. And I'll give them a skull of Yorick. And the kids love it. And they have so much fun with it. And the nice part is, and really the educational piece about this is, for the kids, especially when you start getting to middle school and high school, and they start getting more of a stigma around Shakespeare, is they realize playing with this language, Shakespeare's fun. Shakespeare's cool. And it's really what you want to, you really want to kind of get under there and let them realize there's a lot of really cool things about Shakespeare, especially at that age. The younger kids, 6th graders is like 6th to 8th grade. They're like a sweet spot in all of this stuff. They're not too cool yet. But this is just, they have so much fun with it. And sometimes I'll even have them invent a insult and have to weave it into their character somewhere in the play. But these are other challenges for other kids. That you may feel needed, and it's a lot of fun. Backyard Shakespeare. So you can tell this is on somebody's porch, and it was about 7 kids, and I taught this class. And basically, you show up. There's just a few kids, and then when it's showtime, we did this for 6 weeks, once a week. And then on the 6th week, the family, they all came over and they put down a picnic bench and had a picnic, and everybody sat there and watched the 20-minute show, and the kids had a blast. The parents had a blast, and everybody loved Shakespeare, which again is our goal here. All right. Other ways to engage kids. Most importantly, listen to their ideas. For me, for my plays, I've never been a stickler on you have to memorize the lines verbatim. If they have creative ideas, run with them. I had a kid I taught a long time ago. I'd have the pumpkin pants, like the nice puffy pumpkin pants. And, they fit me. And this little girl, she's probably like 8. They didn't fit her. So we had to pin them in the back. And she went up on stage. She was doing her part. And next thing you know, they fell down, boom, in front of everybody. And everyone cracked up. And I'm like, oh my God, she's not going to go on stage again. Oh my God, this is horrible. And she comes up to me afterwards and she's like, can I do that again? I'm like, what do you mean? She's like, everybody laughed. They thought it was so funny. I want to do it again. I'm like, run with it. Go for it. And so she built it into her shtick. And it was just funny, but it also allowed it to be her play. And that's that. And kids will come up with so many ideas. And as long as, no one gets hurt, run with them. And that's really the most important thing, especially just with Shakespeare, if language is challenging, and a good Shakespearean actor, they speak a lot with their face and their hands and their body. So they're telling a lot of the language as they're saying the words, so the audience can pull it in. And these kids are starting to figure this stuff out as well. You can do a commercial. What I do now is if I have a group of kids, let's say I have 12 kids and 3 kids have a smaller part, I have them do a commercial in the middle of the play. And that's anything they want it to be. And so I'll give these 3 kids who don't have a big part, I stick them in the back And I'm like, come up with whatever you want, and for 1 minute, run with it. I make sure it's okay. And they'll come back out. And I remember for Treasure Island, they came out and they talked about pirate insurance, don't have your ship blown up. And then they did the bump, 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 bump. And they're like, a pirate's insurance can save you 15%. And they like merged both the Allstate and the Progressive ads together. And they had so much fun with it. And it was a crack up, but they made it appropriate for Treasure Island, which is what we were doing. But they also got to be creative. They also got to make up their own script, and they got more stage time. So it was a lot of fun. There's a bunch of wins in there. Do an epilogue. The Tempest really just ends. Everybody leaves the island. This one group that we did was a homeschool group, so the mom always brought the baby with her when they ever taught the class. And by the end, they're like, can we just do an epilogue? And then the two main characters went off at the end, and they came back, 5 years later, and they brought the baby. They're like, we had a baby, and they just did a little epilogue at the end, but it was theirs again to own. They created it, and they used the props, a baby, that they had. Do it as a reader's theater. Maybe you don't want to do a whole performance, but just do a reader's theater. I've worked with a few libraries where they'll get some of my scripts, and then they'll just do like a 2-hour or an hour and a half class where they'll hand out the parts. They'll have fun with auditions in the beginning. They'll hand out the parts. And then at the end, after they've read through it a couple times, they'll sit down, bring in the parents, and they'll do a reader's theater. And it's funny because, you're doing Romeo and Juliet, and they're sitting down, and their character, Mercutio dies. And, it's like, he's like, okay. And he just falls out of his chair anyway. The kids are still dying on stage. So it's pretty fun. But a reader's theater is great. Auditions, I speak about it all the time because auditions are so much fun to do. And shake phrase in a box. This is a fun way. I got this from a teacher in Michigan, and she would take a bunch of very common Shakespeare phrases that you might hear day to day, and then other common phrases. She puts them all in a box and she pulls them out, and the kids have to figure out, is this Shakespeare or not? And so this is just another activity to get them to realize, wow, it's everywhere. Create a musical. You saw it before, and just using contemporary music. There was a school in Singapore, and she wrote all of her own music. So there's so many different ways you can do it. I am not musically inclined per se. So, my Hamlet the musical is going to be funny and interesting to do. But create a musical out of it and just add more engagement to the kids. Create a performance playbill. I had a school, and they created a playbill from one of the plays they did in mine. But it was, this is what they drew up, and it's perfect. Obviously, it's a donkey and Titania there. It had the purple flower on the back. I mean, the kids got the concept, and they put it in a playbill that they made. Write your own version. This one's, especially for older kids, this is high school, 7th, 8th, above. It's a lot harder than it looks. And the reason why is because you have to capture all sorts of emotion with just speaking words. There's no novel where there's a backstory that you can set up a scene. There's just whatever the performance is. And you have to set the scene, set the emotions, set everything by what people say and what people do. But then perform it. And it's just so much, they learn so much because you really have to dive into a script to understand it, to be able to do your own version of it. And by doing that, it's a real big education moment that they don't even realize they're getting, but it's a lot of fun. Create a meme. Kids love technology these days. And this is a Romeo and Juliet one. It's just a great picture and a perfect saying to go with it. So you're telling me, just forget about Rosaline and examine other beauties? Right. So it's a lot of fun. Do a double feature, which I said before. This one was Three Musketeers that we did. And it was funny. One of the girls played D'Artagnan, which is the main character in Three Musketeers. And I remember walking down behind her, and she said, I overheard her say, I hope whoever does my part, they better do it right because it's my part. And it's like, it was great because she had her own ownership of it, which is really what we want. They love it. Find Shakespeare in the world. And that is, Shakespeare's everywhere. And anybody who plays with enough Shakespeare realizes it's an everyday language. It's out there, billboards, you name it. it's around. And when you start giving this as an assignment to find 5 places Shakespeare is somewhere in the world, you start realizing all these different places it is. And it's pretty amazing how eye-opening this is for kids. Shake It Up with Shakespeare, multiple plays at one time. And of course, the Shakespeare insult generator. And also I have a pirate insult generator in case you're doing Treasure Island. So it's just, it's another one to throw a little Yohoy matey in there. Something I want to talk about briefly is the difference between theater and drama. Again, this comes back to my educational aspect. We're getting close, and we'll do some Q&A in a bit. Just a few more slides here. But there's theater and there's drama, and a lot of people use them intermixed, and that's fine. But here's the fundamental difference, and the photos really explain it. In theater, you have an actor. In drama, you have a student or a participant. In theater, you have a director, but in drama, you have a teacher or a leader. And in theater, you have an audience. In drama, you really play for students, family and friends, other participants. It's not so much the audience. And really, the key difference here is it's about the end product, and drama is about the process. Drama is about the educational piece of it. And so just to get your mindset in the right place, you know, it's not about how good of a show can we do for the parents. And I've seen this with like second graders in schools doing massive performances and just burning out these kids on drama when it really is about the process at that age. So that's very important. Oh, other keynote, if you do Julius Caesar, you see all the sheets there and all the togas and, well, the one ghost. You can go to any local hotel, go to their maintenance department, and they always have ripped sheets that they've tried to put on a bed. They can't use them. They'll fold them up, and they're already cleaned. They're folded. They're just in a stack, and they need to get rid of them, and they'll give them to you for free. So I always tell, you know, teachers, educators, hey, go there, get a stack for free, and they're cleaned, ready to go. So have fun with them. And then the kids get to take them home. Cool. Life skills and education. Drama gives you both. Life skills, you know, such as, you know, learning more about empathy, creativity, teamwork, speaking skills, language challenges can be pulled out. Also education, you want to just teaching moments. You know, you want to teach about, like I said earlier, Rome or medieval times or whatever those moments are. You can weave them both in with drama. And this is some of the benefits of drama. This is just over my time of doing this and working with so many parents and so many teachers. These are all the kind of the nut, just drill down to what I find is the key benefits. Empathy. Empathy is one of the biggest benefits of drama and most powerful tools. You know, why is that king so mad? Why did he kill his best friend? Why did he do what he did to his brother? You know, what drives him to do that? And it's funny, the more you start understanding his perspective, the more you start looking back on yourself going, am I greedy for power? You know, would I push myself? And you start realizing other people's shoes. Why is the lovesick fool the lovesick fool? You know, what about it made him that way? And these are great teachable moments. And really with empathy, actually, I'm going to do that. I'll do the slide on empathy in just a bit because we're almost done here. Creativity. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a bit. But you also get social skills and team building. You can learn more about comprehension, both word comprehension and overall story, the story arc of comprehension, of comprehending the bigger picture of the story. Multiple levels in that. Education, self-awareness comes with empathy. Confidence building, just being able to get up on stage. I have many kids that I just want to be on stage as a pirate and die. I don't want to speak, and that's okay. But what's funny is once they start realizing how much fun it is, they're like, can I say one line? Sure, let's make something up. Let's do an insult. And they can say it while they're out there. Presentation skills, learning how to read your audience, address your audience, using props appropriately with that audience. Enunciation, they need to be able to understand what you're doing. And in rehearsals, you get to practice saying it again and again and again. I had a kid who's from the Ukraine, didn't speak English, but when he, you know, he'd been here a few years and he broke in English, but when he'd read, it'd be really awkward. But once he rehearsed it a few times and when show came, you could not tell that he had any kind of an accent or any kind of challenges whatsoever, because he got to practice again and again. Again, rehearsals, doing something again and again before you execute it is a great skill. Affect, using the language of your face. Improvisation, and I don't mean improv as in funny, I mean improv as in somebody misses a line, forgets a prop. You start learning how to solve a problem with the tools you have available. And that's improvising, and that's a huge skill. And how to push yourself. Just getting up on stage for a lot of these kids is massive. And the more you can stretch yourself, the better it's going to be for their long-term life. Okay, I'm going to talk a little bit, a couple of last slides, and we're done. I promise I'll stop. I can just do this forever. Empathy. People who are empathetic are less likely to engage in delinquency or crime. Live someone else's challenges. That's a nice part about drama, is you get to, I mean, that's what drama is. It's always conflict in there. So you get to live their challenges. And what you realize is the more plays that someone does, the more perspectives they get of life. And once you have multiple perspectives, you start looking at the world as an us and not just a me. And that is something that's extremely powerful, and why I tell parents, have them do 4 or 5 plays so they start getting different perspectives. And the last thing on here on empathy is one of the most important steps of stopping people from doing bad things in the future is to understand why the people do them in the first place. So the better you know the why and empathize with it, the better we can stop other problems from happening. So here's a great little slide. There's sympathy and there's empathy. I'm sorry you're in pain. I feel your pain. So there's just a difference of when you're an actor, you get to feel that emotion. So they get to understand it more. And the last main slide I'm going to talk about here is creativity. This so dear to my heart because I love creativity. And yes, you can learn creativity. It is a skill that is not taught in any skill in any class, but is built into drama. And the basic way you learn to be creative is by failing. You get very little creativity being successful, but you learn a ton every time you fail. And then I had a kid once, he went to do a line, and I was sitting as a director in the audience, and he went and he was Claudius being chased down by Hamlet. That's right. And he ran around and he died, and he kind of hit my foot. And then I'm like, okay, run it again. And he ran, and this time he ran and he kind of landed on my lap. And I'm like, all right, run it again. And this time literally he came across and he just kind of cleaned me out. He just knocked me off the chair. And everybody laughed, and his mom was like, Bradley. And I was like, no. He was just stretching. He was just, testing his boundaries, trying to figure out what gets the laugh, what doesn't, what can he do? And that's creativity. I mean, you're going to push the boundaries, but that's what rehearsals are for. You try, you got the laugh, then you work with it. That's how you create new things. Again, let them run with their own ideas. And you can do it. Any actor will tell you there's various forms, how you say your line, what you wear, where you're positioned on stage, the props you use, they all can be creative. And this is the last story I'll leave you with. This is my Pink Flamingo story. This was Jungle Book. And one of the lines in Jungle Book is by, I think it's Bagheera. He goes to tell Mowgli, he says, Mowgli, Shere Khan's waiting for you down at the ravine. And all the kids in our reading started laughing. And I've done this like 3 or 4 times before this, but I was like, why are you guys cracking up so much? They're all, he's at the ravine. Well, where I live, there's a water park called the Ravine. And I just blanked on me because I'm just into the script. And they're like, he's in his floaty. And they started making fun. And I'm like, you guys bring a pink floaty? He's on stage. And next thing you know, for show, Shere Khan, you can see as her face there. And someone went out and made a logo and they put it up in the back wall. But literally Shere Khan walked on stage with a pink flamingo, and Mowgli's all, dude, your floaty's still on? He's like, oh, sorry. And he walks off stage, drops the floaty, they come out and they do their fight scene. But it was so funny because the kids will never forget that. And it was their creativity. And it was teamwork. I mean, it was one person had to do it. One person came up with the idea. One person had the pink flamingo. So they all built it together. That's it, really. I'll stop jabbering here for some questions. But you can contact me. It's my website, playingwithplays.com. Or you can go via this insultlikeshakespeare.com. You can email me, brendan@playingwithplays.com. And that's my phone number. Text me, call me. Just don't call me late for dinner. And that's about it. But I want to leave you with one saying from King Lear: nothing will come of nothing. And if you don't try something new, nothing will happen. You'll just be in the same status quo as you were yesterday. So try something new. It's really what I want to leave you with. And that's it. I'd say stop by my booth, but I don't have a booth here. But let's do some Q&A or just open discussion. Let's see what we got here. All right. First question, can everyone see the slides? I sure hope so, because we're at the end. Okay, well, that's really it. Is there any questions? You can open mic and...
Yeah, Brendan, I have a recommendation and a question.
Sure.
And I was looking at your list of Shakespeare titles, and I know it's so inspiring what you talk about, making it fun for the kids. They just love it, and believe me, I can vouch for the aspect of from our student festival here. It was so great. One time we had a group of fifth graders doing Julius Caesar, and they had their little rubber knives and they whacked Caesar, and they had a great time. Anyway, but I definitely recommend you try also to incorporate the comedy of errors as a great slapstick, almost Abbott and Costello type routine. And there's also some farting in it, so I think the kids really love it. But anyway, so my question is, what my question is, and I love it too. You're saying there's a cross-curricular aspect to it. For example, you could look at Julius Caesar, Richard III, and do a government analysis. They're talking about government, which I think is a great. I would like to do that with adults too. I think it's a great idea. But also, have you ever run? And I think when we met, I think we may have touched on this. Have you ever had problems with parents saying, "Oh, this is too"? Let's say Romeo and Juliet is too rough for younger kids. Or have you ever had a problem?
I have, and I always talk. I try to always talk parents out of this issue. The real issue that I ever have is, you're glorifying suicide or you're making fun of death. And my real argument to them is these are teaching moments. So you have two choices with these kids. Let's say we're talking suicide here. Okay, Ophelia from Hamlet. You have a choice. You can either not do it, and I have teachers that will not touch tragedies because they're afraid of the subject matter. But you can either not talk about it, and guess what? The kids will learn from the internet, from their friends, or some other third source, okay? And you have no idea what they're learning. Or you can actually grab onto the moment and say, you know what? Let's talk about this. Let's understand the why. Use it as a teachable moment. Use it as a moment to be in front of the conversation, to control the conversation. Because if you don't control it, they will figure out. I mean, today's day and age, when I was a kid, we were kids, it's like you didn't have the internet. It wasn't that easy to just go and find stuff out. As maybe you heard from a friend or something. But nowadays, I can just look it up online, and who knows what Google's going to send me back. And so you can either be in control of the conversation or not, but they're going to have the conversation with or without you. And so I always emphasize when you have to embrace it, you have to address it, because they will. They're curious. They're so curious. And I mean, kids, young kids, they'll ask, especially today. If you watch any TV at all, they've seen, or they watch any video games, they've seen plenty of death. And so let's, get in front of that conversation. It's very important. Is that more of kind of like what you were talking about?
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah, definitely. But honestly, I don't get that question too often. And part of it too is kids love to melodramatically die on stage. And there's some kids, honestly, some kids I've taught, they're obsessed with death. And for whatever reason, whatever's in their background, and they just want to play the villain. And that's fine. And sometimes the parents will actually let them do that because they feel that it's an outlet for them to get some of this out. And it could be a counseling session in that kind of sense. Because you don't know what's going on with all these different kids. And thank you for the great presentation. Those kind words. Thank you. I have a very shy child. Do you have any tips for encouraging exceptionally shy children? Yeah, depending on the age, one of the best plays I always start them off with is Jungle Book. And Jungle Book is great because they can play a wolf or a monkey and have no lines whatsoever. All you need is about 5 or 6 other kids or adults, parents, you can read different parts. But then, because I had this exact scenario last summer, this one girl did not want any lines, so we just made her a monkey and a wolf. And so she came, she had the mask on. With the monkey, we had masks. We had Curious George mask, and then a wolf, so we had this like cool little pull over here. And the nice part is by the end of the week, she was like, she came up, she's like, can I say one line? Can I say two lines? She actually started wanting to say lines. So we let her, she was our, what we call, so in the way we do Jungle Book, all the wolves, they howl, ho, ho, ho. And they're like, you guys like pork, right? And they're like, yeah, pork, pork, pork. And then one monkey's all, chicken. And, it's a funny laugh. And so she actually got the funny laugh line. She got to be able to one to say chicken, and everybody laughed. And then her mom came up to me a few months later. She tried to play, and the teacher was like, yeah, we're going to give you this part because you did so well. And she just started coming out of her shell. But it starts off small. Don't push them. Let them read what they want to read. I mean, at first, just do it at home. Just read some of the plays at home. Just, you and them back and forth. You can play different voices and characters. It's no different than playing with characters, in their room. You're just doing it now, reading script. So start there and let them get used to the language. Do you create your own artwork on the playbooks? No. I have an actual, there's an artist that I use. His name's Ron, give me a second. He puts out, honestly, free art every single day. And he's been doing this for 20 years. Ron Leishman. And he's been doing the art for all of my books for a number of years now. We've got a relationship where I actually just tell him, what I'm looking for, and he'll start popping some of the stuff out. I've gotten very dangerous, and I don't draw he does the character drawings. I'll get other art that I'll put in place and put that in there. But I'm always the one manipulating the art on stage or on the screen. So I use Adobe, not Acrobat, not Illustrator, not InDesign. Gosh, what's about? Not Photoshop. Wait, Illustrator. Yeah, I use Illustrator, and I manipulate the whole thing. I've done it for years now, so I'm pretty good at it. I'm not great at drawing per se, but I did just do. Let me see. I started like this. I don't know if you can see it. So Tom Sawyer earlier this year, the fence, I actually hand drew the fence, scanned it in, turned it into a vector, and put it in, and it was my own. And then in Alice in Wonderland, I had my son. He started to get into the art, so he learned how to draw a cake, and we put a little "Eat Me" sign on it. So I put his work in there. So I've gotten good enough where I can start manipulating stuff pretty well. And that's it. And the actual, if you look at each play there, they have a different author. The author's always in the audience watching the play. So you saw Shakespeare, and on this picture, this is Robert Louis Stevenson. In Beowulf, we just have an outline of a shadow because we want it as a teachable moment, basically saying, nobody knows who the author was. So that's why there's just a shadow. But I have somebody else, actually, they go out and they create that art. And then again, I manipulate and put them all in. So any other questions?
I just wanted to say how wonderful it is that you are adapting Shakespeare even virtually now and enabling families to do that. So I think that you've just shown how timeless Shakespeare really is.
Well, thank you very much. You can actually, there's a link on my website on one of the tabs. It says videos, and under videos, I just have a bunch of different schools, and some of them are teachers that have gotten there and they've done some of my shows. Some are other, they've done other performances of ours. And what I've learned is some of the teachers want to use that for their kids to watch before they actually go perform it, so they can start getting a feel of what other people are saying. But and they do them all sorts of different ways. Have you guys heard of Sofa Shakespeare? Like Gordon, you have, but Sofa Shakespeare, basically somebody created this right at the beginning of the pandemic, and they took a play, I think it was like Macbeth or something, and they gave anybody who volunteered, they gave them like 3 or 4 lines to do, or like a short scene to do whatever way they wanted. And then she just took all these scenes and clipped them all together, like 100 different people doing them all together. And so they're all performing from their sofa per se, but he did this with his kids. And like one of them actually did like anime graphic arts, and they went and did them. Another one just did it with his brother and sister. Another one did it with just puppets. But they did the one of my plays that way. And there are so many creative ways, virtually even, to do this. And I love it. And I always embrace and just try to let anybody know, hey, you do it whatever way you want. You know, I give away a lot of rights that way. And currently I've given away free classroom during the pandemic. Many schools have had their theater programs shut down or funds pulled. And so I've given away my plays for free for the pandemic use, just to use for classroom use. But if they decide to perform it in some way, they still have to pay licensing fee. But I mean, if you know an educator who wants to use my plays, have them send me an email, and then I'll send them. Basically, I send them. I don't do it with all 27. There's 23 scripts I'm doing it with, but I send them 23 scripts for them to use with their kids, to use as a teaching moment, because they can't afford it themselves. I mean, teachers already can't afford it, but now a lot of schools. I mean, I knew this was a problem when the Houston Independent School District is probably the biggest theater arts school district in the country. And theater in Texas is massive. And they had their funding, most of their funding cut. So as soon as he told me that, because they were actually a big revenue source for me. As soon as they told me that, I was like, okay, so I'm losing no matter what. So what I still want to do is I want to just let the teachers get some freedom, and they're under so much stress already. So I wanted to, give a little back. So.
Well, thanks so much, Brendan. This has just
Sure.
been fabulous. And
thanks.
Guys, now you realize I didn't oversell it as far as him being a proselytizer. So I hope you're all believers. All say amen right now. So great. It's just fabulous. And if I could this is part of our regular lecture series. We have another lecture coming up on October 18th. We have Professor Paul Mikett speaking on the sonnets as dialogue. And on January 10th, we even have we're already scheduled, we have a professor from UC Irvine, Leticia Garcia, who is speaking on Shakespeare in Mexico. So stay tuned for those events, and then keep up with our website. So again, and the Coronado Library, again, thank you so much, Sean and Katya. It's been such a wonderful forum.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.